Sorry about that, folks. We'll be starting in about 5 minutes. Hi everybody and welcome to StashBlaster Quilts. I, as usual, forgot to turn my lights on. Let me do that. It has been a crazy week. I seem to have a lot of those lately. So we're going to go ahead and get started. If this is your first time here, I am a professional organizer by trade. And so I usually start with a tip. The tip for this session is to not be afraid to reevaluate. So because of the fact that my hands are not working properly right now, all my hand sewing is off the table, and so is some of my machine sewing. So no quilting, anything where I have to really have any real pressure. I am going to attempt to sew with you today. If it hurts too bad, I'm going to stop. But it's the same thing with your projects. If you're halfway through a project, and don't get me wrong, there are parts of any project that you'll hate. Everybody hates parts of it. I was talking to some amazing quilters whose pictures I believe I showed last time, pictures of their quilts, who told me that when they do lots of teeny tiny quilting because it's very realistic, and there's parts of that that they hate. They call it their sanding portion of the project because they hate sanding projects as well, but it's something that has to be done in order to get the final result. Okay, we all have some of those. But if you're doing a project, let's say it's a king-size quilt, and it's fighting you the whole way, and you're just miserable every time you think about going to work on it, it's time to reevaluate. Do I have to do this quilt? Did I promise it? Is it a commission? Do I have to do it this way? Are there other ways of accomplishing the same pattern or things that might be easier for the way that my brain works? Could it be that maybe I don't need a king-size quilt? Maybe I can do it as a throw. Okay? There's lots of options that we have, but we often get locked into what's called the sunk cost fallacy. And that's the money or the time you've already put into a project makes you feel you no longer have the option to just let it go. I can't waste all that money that I've spent on the fabric. I can't waste all the time that I've spent cutting things out or whatever it is, right? How long I've been doing paperwork or whatever for my taxes or whatever it is. You can have that sunk cost either in money or time, and it makes you feel you can't end the project or the situation, while at the same time it'll stymie you for ways to get around it and make it either more enjoyable, or maybe handing it off to somebody else. Maybe you're half done with this quilt and it has to be done because it's for someone's birthday or something. Maybe you can say, okay, I'm going to have somebody else finish this for me. Okay? There's lots and lots of options that we have, but when we get locked into, I've spent all this time, I've spent all this money, you don't have to finish it. You really don't. And I have been in the middle of reorganizing projects, and the client is just really unhappy. And so we'll talk about, okay, at this point, with this amount of work we can accomplish A, with this amount of work we can accomplish B, or with this amount of work we can accomplish C. Which would you prefer? It may mean continuing to do this. Okay, we still have to do the whole project. This whole king-size quilt needs to be done. Now we can talk about different ways of accomplishing that project. Could you maybe set up a sewing time with a buddy so at least you're not stuck here all alone when you're sewing? So go to a sit and sew to do it. Or do it on Zoom with a group. Or pay somebody to finish it for you. Or do less of the middle and put on more borders. Okay? There are choices, there are options, but we can get locked into it into our heads and feel that we're stuck, there's no choices, and we're just miserable. So, be willing to reevaluate. Another way to do that is, I have 5 projects that I want to work on. Are there any that are time sensitive? If yes, then it has to take priority. But if all 5 are kind of like, eh, I'll get them done when I get them done, then go ahead and stop the one that's frustrating you for right now and switch to another one, and then come back to it later when you've had a chance to get refreshed. Okay? So that's the tip for this session. Okay, I did mention my hands. They are still bad. I have still had to work with clients. I love working with my clients, but it has still been hard on these muscles in both hands. In fact, it's actually around the whole U at this point. So I've been wearing compression gloves when I've been working. I had a couple of you suggest that. I do that. I don't hear on film, just because, or on camera, because it looks really, really weird. So I have done that. I have been able to do some designing as long as I'm careful, and some of the time I've been having to do weird things, like this is the normal way you would hold a fork, right? I've had to hold a fork on some days like this so that I don't have to engage these fingers. So I've had to do some really weird workarounds, but I am getting along. It is getting better. There are some worse days than others. Today, since I had 2 clients, it's on the worst side, but that's okay. But cutting is hard. Doing anything like with a pencil where I have to keep going back and forth to mark lines is hard. So I've done very limited amounts of that. But I can iron, because with the ironing, it's this way, so this thumb is not engaged really at all, except for like laying out the fabric and then folding it. And then folding it, I can use these 2 fingers instead of these 2, because this maneuver, this is what hurts right in here. So I'll use two fingers here. I'm making it work, but I have tons of fabric that I'm still processing, and I do my processing in 2 phases. The first phase is anything that's a 1/4 of a yard, whether it's a standard quarter or a fat quarter, up to and larger. Okay, if it's that 1/4 of a yard to a full yard, it's it's folded into this shape, and if it's a yard or more, it's just folded one last time. Okay, and so I did get some stuff ushed and ironed this week. Hold on, there we go. So it's not a lot, but it's quite a bit of time, and you know, I can only do like 10 or 15 minutes at a time, then I'd have to stop and come back to it, because even though it doesn't use the thumbs as much, it does still use them a little. But all of this is going to be going up on my fabric wall. So this is, for those of you who haven't seen this before, I have 4 panels here, this size, that cover this wall to within, I think it's 14 inches from the wall, the one that goes this way, because I have bifold doors that open there, so I need the doors to open. But it covers the whole wall, floor to ceiling, and so this is where my fabric stash is. That's a 1/4 of a yard or larger. Behind where you're sitting is where the strips and blocks I have cut are. So these are all a 1/4 of a yard or larger, so they're going to go onto this wall, which is why this one panel is missing. Yes, I can tell right now. Some of you are going, oh my god, that's a lot of fabric. When I do the studio tour later on in the year, once I get the room over here done, because I'm hoping it's end of this year, you'll be able, I'll take these panels down, and you'll be able to see just how much is there. I do have some people who will call me and say, hey, have you got a piece of this fabric, if there's a specific one they're looking for. I also have some people that come over and shop on my wall. You know, they just can't find the right shade of whatever, and so they come over and they take a look, and then if they see something they like, they take it with them. I have no problem sharing my stuff, but I don't really want to chop into this for the temperature quilt if I don't need to. So I kept aside the pieces that are smaller than either 9 inches by full width of fabric or a fat 1/4. If it's smaller than that, that's set aside. And those get processed into strips and blocks. And then I also have little tiny pieces for my chips. But for this quilt, I need little tiny pieces. So I think I'm probably going to be raiding my chip stash. These are all from my 1-inch strip set, 1-inch strip drawers over here. But I think that I may just get started with some of these and then look for some other ones in the random scraps to pull out more pieces for this and just cut them the right size to start with, rather than having to cut 1-inch strips down to 3/4 of an inch for parts of the house that I'm making. So that's what's going on with that. So we're gonna hope that the thumbs don't hurt too bad, so that I can keep sewing with you today. But that's the fabric ironing I've been doing. I did get a question from Jerry. Jerry's been on this channel for pretty much since like the fourth or fifth live stream. So so Jerry asked me, why do you see me in these purple shirts so much? There's a couple reasons for that. Number one, purple is my favorite color. Number two, I tend to wear plain shirts like this when I'm working because I don't want to wear anything with a logo that someone could find offensive, even if it's actually not. But language changes over time. People misunderstand what some words mean. There could be a picture that I think is perfectly innocent that they may not. So for example, if I had a picture of the Grand Teton Mountains in shadow, they're called the Tetons because they look like breasts. You know, if there's anything that anyone could possibly misunderstand, I don't wear it. And it's so plain is easiest. So I wear that a lot for that. And I'm often here, coming home from a job, eating my dinner so that my stomach doesn't rumble while we're doing this, and coming up to film just about that fast. So that's just one of those things where you're going to see a bunch of these shirts on days that I'm working. If I'm giving speeches, you'll see me in much nicer clothes. And you get what you get. So I do try to change it out if I have time, just so that you're not always looking at me in the same things. But that's life, you know. I appreciate the fact that he asked the question, because it is a little bit unusual that you know, I'm wearing the same things all the time, but that's how that works. I have a lighter color of purple that I wear as well, but that's okay. I was also asked a little bit about my company, because I've mentioned I'm a professional organizer. And it was from somebody actually in another country, which was kind of cool. So I am a professional organizer, which means I help people manage their possessions. I help them decide what to keep, what to let go, how to donate it, how to sell it, and then how to organize the things that they have left so that they can find them when they need them. And so my company is Conquer the Clutter, and that is my day job, if you want to think about it that way. That's how I actually support the household. My husband works for me, so my company has to support the whole thing. I have a bunch of people who work for me, and it's actually a lot of fun. It is. If my system wasn't breaking down as much as it is, I would still be out there all day, every day with my clients. I love what I do. I'm just starting to fall apart a little bit. I have had arthritis since I was 12, and it's one of those things that gets worse over time, as I'm sure many of you know. And so I'm getting to the point where I just can't be in the field as much anymore. I still have some clients. Our company will help people that no one else will help. Unfortunately, for a lot of companies, if you call them and you say that you have anxiety or depression, you're bipolar, you have ADHD, autism, anything like that, they will tell you that they can't help you. And so what do? Especially since things like ADHD and bipolar and autism tend to have the side effect of being disorganized. We take those clients, but that requires a lot of additional education. And so my people promote up through the ranks as they gain more and more education. Right now, I have the most. My operations manager, Jamie, she has a lot. She had a little bit of a head start because she was a special ed teacher in her previous life. But I still need to be out there for some people. And I do all of the assessments as well. And then I make sure that the organizer that I'm assigning has the skills that are needed. And then if there's more than one who does, I try to personality match the organizer to the client. So there's a lot involved in it. But it's really super important to us that our clients are comfortable and all of that. So I spend a lot of my time talking to people about how to be efficient, how to be organized, how to make it so that it takes less effort to maintain your property, how to prepare for a move, how to downsize, how to handle an estate. When somebody has passed away, I do a lot of estate work. So that's what my full-time life is. I do have this live stream. I do author books. I've written 3 so far, and I'm working on my 4th one, all related to hoarding disorder. And when the 4th one is done, I have promised myself and my husband that I will not do any more writing about hoarding for at least 3 years, because I'm getting burned out on it. I have spent many years writing about hoarding. And I know a lot of people are using AI to write their books now, but that's not me. Mistakes and all is me. And so I'm down. I have, I think, 7 more chapters to write in the last book, and then it's done. It's been with some other organizers for review, and they've had a chance to look at it, parts of it, and they've given me great feedback so that I can go ahead and make some changes, because the last book is for organizers, because a lot of us in the industry don't really know the best ways to work with the population, and that is one of the things I do a lot. So I do write. I am going to be attempting to do a lot more filming, both for that company and for you guys here at StashBlaster Quilts. So filming of actual projects and just cool stuff. This is my playground here. And I'm hoping to do things like have some classes, have some open sews, do a bunch of other things so that we can be on the chat together, and we can be sewing alongside somebody else. And then if you get stuck, or you're taking a break, you can put out a question and then people can chime in. So I'm working on things like that as well. I would love to have some sort of a thriving Zoom community at some point, where we set up regular Zoom times, maybe for membership, when I have enough viewers to do a membership, so that everybody can talk, that's in that group, and show what you're doing, and do some sit and sews and that kind of stuff. So I have a lot of plans for the future for this channel. Don't know exactly when they're going to happen, but I am working on them. Project updates is usually something that happens if you're new here. I have several projects in the works. I have the annual quilt that we're doing together. I have a grandmother's flower garden that I was doing all by hand, so I can't do it right now. So there's that. And then my son just got married last month. And so what I'm hoping to work on with you today are parts of the wedding quilt that I'm making for them, which is a temperature quilt. Now, there's lots and lots of ways to do temperature quilts. I originally planned a very easy way, but for those of you who know me, I could not stop with the easy way. I had to make it complicated, and I didn't make it just complicated, I made it teeny weeny and complicated. So when this is done, this is going to be the top of a queen size bed minus 12 inches for pillows at the top. And so I need to get 366 houses on curved roads on this quilt. So each house is going to finish at 2 inches. Now, I saw a temperature quilt somebody else did where They basically had the box of the house, and then the triangle on the top as the high, and then, which was basically a flying goose, and then the wings of the goose over here was the low for the day. Okay, that's kind of cool. Do one flying goose, do one square, and you're done. No, I didn't do that either. I had to get even more complicated. So today we're going to try to get some house bodies sewn. I think I have a couple of them here where I have the roof as well. But for a lot of them, I don't have the roof as part of what I've pre-cut. Assuming that this works, I am going to put this up on the website so you can see the houses and how they turned out. Now, could I have done them bigger? Sure. Could I have done them with just a simpler design? Of course I could have. Could I have done them instead of doing 365 plus 1 days, because I want to have the wedding day and the anniversary day both on there? Could I have done like a month? Sure, I could have just done their first month. So there's lots of options I could have taken to make it easier. Straight roads, much easier. No, I didn't do that. So, so let's talk about this. Now, with temperature quilts, you have to record the highs and the low for every day. So I don't live very far from Dulles International Airport, which is outside and west of Washington, D.C. So D.C. has Reagan, and then due west is Dulles. North of D.C. is Baltimore. So those three airports are pretty busy, and a lot of people fly out of all three. But I live near Dulles, so I spent a bunch of time trying to find historical data so I wouldn't have to go every day onto a site to find out what the high and low was for the day, because the low might change because I'm not staying up till midnight. It is really hard to get the history, simply because there's been shenanigans years and years ago. And so the Weather Channel doesn't give you a history. It gives you the day, but it doesn't give you the history. So the only place that I found that does the history is called Weather Underground, and you can put in your location, and it will tell you a whole bunch of stations that are near you. I picked the airport. There is actually a weather station in my neighborhood, and these stations are very small, and they send out all kinds of information for collection by the Weather Service and other places. But once you get onto Weather Underground, you can plug in a month. Well, you can look at every day. You can look at a weekly history, or you can look at a monthly history. So in this case, I would plug in, let's say, February, and then click on View, and it will give me a whole bunch of information. It gives you the high and low temperatures. It gives you the precipitation, if there was any. The wind speeds, both the high and the low and the averages, and what the wind gusts were, and the pressure at sea level. So there's a lot of it. Oh, and humidity and dew point. So there's a lot of stuff that you can get there. And so what I've done is, I'm just coming back here so I can see you guys, if there's any questions here. There are lots of charts out there for temperature quilts, and it'll give you the various ways to track them. I'm just doing an Excel spreadsheet, and I color-coded each month. Hold on, let's get to the view so I can see what you can see. Here we go. So I color-coded each month just to make it easier for myself to know where I'm at. And so I have here, okay, let me move this. This camera is a little stuck. Okay, let's switch cameras. Okay, so hopefully I can get this to where it'll be. There we go. So I just have the date, the high and the low. That's all I need. And I made a mistake here because it said 52 and I caught it. And then here I only had 6 and it was 66. So after I printed this, I was like, okay. I should have double checked it before I printed it, but you know, life can be like that some days. As I get each building prepared, I put a check mark. So I did a bunch of them that were in the 40s range, which is why there's check marks out of order. I started with the highs and lows where both were under 30 degrees. Let me get this a little closer. Here we go. So like right here, since my high and low were under 30, on my chart, under 3, that should say under 30. Anything under 30 is black and gray. Okay, so since I have some that are both, I have gray buildings with black roofs because they're both under 30. If it's 30 to 39, it's brown. If it's 40 to 49, it's green. 50 to 59, etc., etc. Yellow is 90 to 99, and if we get any days over 100, which we have been known to do, then it'll be white. Now, by doing this instead of doing individual colors, I can do this. These are all gray, but they're different, so my houses won't be the same color even though they're in the same color range. These are 3 different black roofs. Because it's still black, it's still under 30 degrees, but it's not going to look exactly the same. Now, if I have multiple days in a row that are, and I want to do at least 3 if I'm going to do this, where it's the same low temperature, even if it's different highs, if the lows are all in the same range, I can actually stick my houses together into townhouses. And so I could have the same one black roof go across them all, and have a red house, a green house, and a blue house. But when you have townhouses, you see that. You see that this one might be brick, this one might be siding, and this one might be something else, and then they repeat. Okay? So that will give me a little bit more variety in where things are going to fit on my plan. I did show you how I'm going to do the plan last time we were here. I haven't finished it yet. I really haven't, because I want to get a better feel for how this is going to go. I'm in Northern Virginia, so just to give you an idea, the highs here in February, the highs went from 24 to 66. That's a whole bunch of different colors and layouts here. In March, so far, it's gone from 37 to 75. Now what am I going to do? Right? So I want to get a little better feel for how this is going to shake out. Because if I'm going to have townhouses, it'd be really nice if I could have a couple next to each other, so it looks a little bit more planned. It's going to be what it's going to be. I am going to design this with just regular houses everywhere. And then I'll see about putting things together as the temperatures come in. But the more times I can consolidate with things like townhouses, that's going to open up small pockets of space where I might be able to add something extra. I've mentioned billboards or shops or a lake. Who knows, right? I might be able to add in these small little extras that'll make it a little extra special. Now, I'm hoping that the kids are going to think this is extra special anyway, and that they're going to appreciate the amount of work that's going to go into this, because this is nuts. Okay? But it is what it is, and hopefully they'll appreciate that. But just for me, and to be able to share with you, maybe doing some extra buildings, that'll be fun. Maybe a little park, with a swing or something like that. I was laughing with a friend of mine because I own, well, I just sold the sewing machine. I just sold a featherweight machine. So now I only have 16 sewing machines. Okay, so yeah, I'm blushing a little bit here. You can probably see it on camera. And so we were having a raffle that's going to be on April 1st, which included a Bernina, and I forget what the other sewing machine was, and an embroidery machine. Now, out of all these sewing machines I don't have an embroidery machine. The lady who donated that for the raffle upgraded, and she said, well, it only comes with these small things. I actually put some money into the raffle for the embroidery machine. Now, I don't plan on doing a lot of embroidery, but I was thinking if I could use it for some of the enhancements that I'm planning for this quilt, it might be a lot easier than me trying to do stuff by hand, particularly since my hands, according to the doctor, could take up to 6 months to get back to normal. It would be really nice if I could put those little embroidered features on by machine, because a lot of them are going to be like 1/4 of an inch. That pumpkin I talked about last time for Halloween or for Thanksgiving, it can't be very big because the house itself is only going to finish at 2 inches, right? So, you know, maybe a bicycle or something just as a little extra thing, or a kid on a bike on the street. So that's why I'm thinking about the embroidery machine if I win it. Here's fingers crossed. It's probably not going to happen, but the guild is a charity, so I don't feel too bad. I'm still supporting the charity. I'm still supporting my guild. So if I don't win, I will survive. I will just be crushed. Anyway, so let's go ahead and make some tiny houses. I do need to go over and get the house numbers from over there, so I'll be back in just a second. I did not have time to do that before this all started. Okay, I'm gonna pin something over them. Because don't you always? Isn't that the kind of thing that's pretty normal? Now I'm just kind of moving some stuff to a sideboard that I have. This is probably making some strange ASMR. I don't really get the whole ASMR thing, but there you go. Alright. I've had a lot of people say they just love to listen to the sewing machine, or people cutting fabric, you know, when they're cutting out clothing or whatever, or even just running the AccuCutter, which just really doesn't make much noise, but it does make some. It's like, okay, if that makes you happy, I am happy to play along. So I was asked how I am tracking all of these little tiny houses. So let me switch cameras again. Okay, so I am doing 4-inch, actually closer to 4 1/4, because I'd rather trim them down once the houses are built. 4 1/4 inch strips out of the background green and out of the fabric, plus the other sizes that I need. So I cut a whole bunch of these, and then I just clipped the one strip 3 across onto these index cards. And then as I cut the other pieces that I need, I'm just clipping them in the same place. And this is the house number, because all I have to do is take that off of the date. So for example, the February 17th house is house number 217. And the March 11th house is house number 311. Now with the 2 digits, the 3, 4, 25, it's 304 is going to be the date. So I'm going to put 2 spots on the day. It's just in single here because the formatting is what it is. So now I know what the house number is, so when I make the house body, even if I haven't made the roof yet, I can put the right number into the body and always do the roof later. So the advantage to that is I can just sit and do a whole bunch of roofs, and I won't have to keep changing my threads. Now, do I have to change the threads at all? No, but these are fairly small pieces, and they're going to have to be pressed really well. It is more likely than if I was doing big pieces that the thread will show. So, I am going to do a lot of thread changes just so that it's going to look a little bit better. This is a wedding quilt. So, when I'm doing the roofs, all the roofs have green triangles, the same green every roof. So I really don't have to worry about it. I can just go ahead, put on my green, and use that as my color. Another advantage to waiting until the temperatures are in is if I am doing the townhouses, that would be a bigger roof, but I could still cut out and prepare, even partially sew, the houses together, the main bodies, for the temperature ranges we get the most of, you know. So that makes life a little bit easier too. So when I am sewing, I can do a whole bunch at once. Now, I'm also using up a whole bunch of bobbins, hopefully, in this, which means, for example, I have the green in the bottom right now, and there's not a whole lot on there. But when it's gone, it'll be gone. I'll put a new one in. Since these are such small pieces, I don't mind if I have to re-sew a little bit. I just hate it when I'm doing a big long strip and I run out of bobbin thread. You know, these are 1-inch strips or less that I've cut up into this. The door is the biggest piece other than the 3/4 inch longer strip that I'm doing, which I'm going to wind up cutting in half. And it's 1.5 inches. So this is a fine project to use up all the little tiny pieces on. Okay. I try to move the camera before I turn it on so you guys don't get seasick. So that's the weird sound you were hearing. Last time I showed you the jigs I used to do the numbers. So I've done all of the numbers through April. So I don't have to worry about that for a bit. Okay. So I have put gray up above, and it's a gray that will work with all 3 of these houses right here. So I'll be able to sew a bunch of stuff all at once. Now, I could do one house at a time, but then I'll have to keep changing the bottom thread. Or I can sew these long strips together and then change as needed for the individual houses, because I'm going to do the 3 at a time. So I think that's what I'm going to do. Hopefully that's not too confusing. So these are, oops. I'll be able to know which ones go together because the rest of these pieces are going to match. Okay, so let me just pull these out now. In this particular case, on these 3, I have also done the roofing pieces because I know what those temperatures are already. Oops. Oh, and these index cards have the house numbers on them. But once I put in the actual fabric house number, I'll be able to cross it out and use another one, and cross it out and use another one. So this little card is going to get used a bunch on both sides. Okay, so these are, like I said, closer to 4 1/4. They need to be 4 inches because, like I said, I am going to cut them in half. All right. This is also the kind of thing where I would normally do a leader and under. Oh, see, I almost sewed the wrong sides together here. But that's not going to be as easy as I would like, and I would be having kind of some strange thread colors. So I like to do white or black when I'm doing that, just to make my life a little easier. So I'm just going to hold these threads down and drop my needle. So all of these are going to be sewn with the normal 1/4 inch seam allowance. My petal is slipped under the shelf. Hold on. Okay, I'm going to hold these threads down while I start sewing. Oh, I didn't change the cameras. I apologize. Oh, I did. Yay! But it's still wrong. Okay, let me move it. There we go. That's better. All right. So I've sewn the first one here. Now, the first one is the leader for the next two. All right, right sides together. I didn't really worry about that when I was putting them on the cards, which you could if you were concerned. That's number 2. And lastly, number 3. Now, because of the green thread, and because I do have the roofs done, I'm going to go ahead and sew those as well. Let me show you kind of where we are on the pattern. Okay, so with this house, I have now just sewn the background grass to the first panel, first piece of the house for both sides. Like I said, this is a 4 1/4 inch strip. It's actually closer to 4 1/8. I only need a 2 inch in order to complete this because these are each 1/4 inch. So this is 1/4, half, 3/4, 1, 1 1/4, 1 1/2. So with seam allowances, it would be 2. Okay. I'm leaving a little extra so I can just trim it all up, make it all nice and clean at the bottom. But that's up to you whether you want to do that or not. So this is also the same green because this is the roof line. So here I have the roof pieces right on top. And like I said, with the green, I'm not going to have to change my bobbin if I do this right now. Oops. I have to keep the number with the house until I get the number sewn in. Okay. Now in this particular case, I'm going to, you have to pay attention because these go opposite directions. Okay. So since I'm going to be sewing these two together, right sides to right side, right? When I sew here and flip it back, it's going to be correct. Okay? I drew the diagonal line. I'm going to sew right on the diagonal line. So this just goes in like this. I've got this little notch here in the middle of my foot. It's right here. Okay, and so my pencil's now in the tip of it. Maybe if I come in you can see it a little bit better. So that's going to follow my line, the point on that notch. You need to go slow when you start this. You can pick up speed in the middle if you want. But even though I am a fast sewer, I don't want to mess this up. Now I'm going to leave the other side off to the side. So like this. And then I'll do the next two, and then I will take them off here and then sew the other two sides on. One advantage to how this house is built, unlike flying geese, they're not going to overlap, so I can sew both on before I press. Okay? Actually, I need to get my iron going. That might be helpful. I was doing writing this week, so my iron was on the floor, which is not particularly helpful. Okay. So now 219. So the yellow here, this is the door. Okay, I don't want you to be confused by that. The gray is the building. I am going to have doors that are going to be kind of wild like this, just for the fun of it. I could have this all be solids. It would probably look a little more cohesive that way. But my son is kind of wacky, just like his mother. And so I think he would appreciate having it be a little bit more colorful and wild. So now I'm putting this in, like so. I'm double checking that my diagonal goes the correct direction. And now I'll feed this one in. Now, there are some of you who like to chat through the chat box here, and there are some of you who don't. Everybody's welcome here, because I know a lot of you watch this later. But if you're watching it live, if you have any questions or any comments or any suggestions or things like that, I am always open for suggestions. So please feel free. There's about 3 of you that comment on a fairly regular basis live, but of course if it's not live then you can't. But at that point you can email me at mail, M-A-I-L, at StashBlasterQuilts.com, and at that point I can go ahead and I'm just going to snip off these ones that are behind for right now. I know you can't see it because my big old arm is in the way, but I just snipped off the last 2, as well as the bigger pieces here that I cut. That I sewed. There we go. Now, if I had a whole bunch of these done, I could do all of the green things at once if I wanted. But I'm not worrying about that now. I'm just going to do these 3 that I have the houses for. Now, again, this is going upper left to lower right. So this one needs to go lower left to upper right. Okay? Good, you can actually see that pretty well. Alright. That's because I used a pen on that one instead of the pencil like the others. I kind of used what was handy. That's number 1. Now this one has to go the same way. Okay. And then the one that I couldn't take off before, I'll take off now. Well, actually I could have if I had just pulled everything and left a long tail. But this way they're all, this way they're all leading and ending each other, which is kind of nice. Okay, so let's do this one. Okay, so that's the last piece for these 3 that has the green. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it off. Leave the tail. Okay. So this is what my 3 roofs will look like. See? Just like that. Easy breezy. Okay? Alright. So these I'm going to basically fold in half. Snip. There we go. Easy again. Now the seam allowance, because this finishes with each piece only at 1/4 of an inch, The seam allowances might make this a little bulky, in which case, because I'm actually doing this for the first time in front of you guys, so I may decide to go back later and trim it up a little bit. By cutting this back just a smidge, then they should lap each other very easily, lay over each other without buckling in the middle. Okay, so I need to move a couple things here. First is my drink, because without my Diet Coke, I'm useless. And then I put all my bobbin cases. So, let me show you here. So I have a few bobbin cases. There's these. And then there's all of these. When I start getting low, like pretty low, on a spool of thread, I wind it onto a bobbin. Then, when the bobbins start getting low, I wind them onto cards that I travel with. So I took about 18 inches or so of thread off this spool, and that's what's left. Okay? So I don't think you can really see how little there is. There's like one row, and it's starting to come up from the bottom. So there's not a whole lot here. So I'll take my little card and I'll wrap it around, then I'll have an empty spool that I'll be able to fill again, an empty bobbin. But I don't want to mess with this one anymore, and I don't need it because I have the, I don't have no more green. So, alright, what I'm doing now is, like I said, I had to move some things around. I did not get to it before I came. I barely had my dinner. So, I had my cutting mat on my little table here, but now I need to have my table for ironing. Excuse me, for those purists out there, pressing. Alright, I am going to go ahead. What does this say? Now I don't know what you're seeing. All of a sudden I'm seeing both of my cameras. You should be seeing me. So I guess this is kind of cool. If this works, then it'll allow me to do this and see what I'm doing before I make everybody seasick. Okay. So now I'm going to switch to camera 3. Hot diggity, there it is. Okay. So my iron is heating. It's not quite hot enough yet, but it's getting close. So this is for 3 blocks. This is what I have. Alright. Now, I am going to press to the green on the on both the houses and the house bodies and the roofs. Oh, hold on, these didn't actually separate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so I have 6 house bodies and 3 roofs. So first we press to warm up the seams anyway, which is just straight down and then lift straight up. I'm going to do these two. Okay, so looking at this, it's kind of odd because you can tell my tension was a little off here, but not here. So at this point, I'm just going to gently pull with my nail a little bit and release some of that tension. Okay. Okay. Now, I'm going to press towards the green. I'm going to just finger press and then run my nail just a little bit on there. That'll help it stay flat for when the iron is coming on to do its job. Hold on. Let me see if I move this like this. Hopefully my finger's a little less in the way when I do it this way. Of course, it's blocking the light a little, so, it's a little bit of a win, a little bit of a loss. Now, if I wanted to, all of the lower blocks in the quilt could be made a little bit long, to trim up later. I didn't do that with all of them. For a lot of them I just did the exact measurements, but on these first ones I did it. At least for these pieces. I don't remember if I did in the middle or not. You can also sew the seams in the middle a little scant, and that will also work. But since this is a wedding quilt and I want it to be used and washed a lot, you do not want to go too crazy on cutting back your seam allowances, because that fabric is there to give you the best hold. And so if you were to cut this back maybe to like a 1/16, then it'd be much more likely to come apart. And like I said, I want this to be able to be run through the washing machine. You know, if they're under it and they don't feel well, I want it to be comforting. So I just do kind of all the finger pressing that I can at once on a project like this. Okay, so I am not ironing. I am going to touch the tip a couple of times on the way, press down, and then look at it, and then make sure I'm happy with it, and then press solid. Okay, and then you let it cool in place. You will have a much better press if it cools in place. So I'm going to do the same thing here. Touch it a couple of times. Touch it here a couple of times. Check it. I'm happy. Put it down and let it sit. Okay. Move this one over so I have a little bit more room. Touch a couple places. Put it down. Check. Happy. Alright, so we're almost out of time. It's almost 8. So we will finish building these houses next time. Okay, I will specifically leave these houses, even if I'm making other ones, to do with you. So you can watch these particular ones start to finish. But what we have done, let me move this camera around. Hold on here, okay. Alright. So what we have done is I've sewn these two together and these two together, and the roof is now together. So all that's left is the door section and then the number section. So this is one seam and this will be 2 seams, and then we put all 4 of these sections together, and then we attach the body to the roof. So next time we'll definitely be able to finish this. But I hope you all have a wonderful couple of weeks. We are here the 1st and 3rd Wednesday of the month from 7 to 9 o'clock. So the next time we're, sorry, 7 to 8. So the next, sorry, I just brought my hand up under the clear plexiglass table. So sorry about that. Scared myself at least as much as I scared anybody else. So we will be meeting April 2nd, okay, from 7 to 8. And then, of course, the live streams stay up forever, so you can come back and see it whenever you would like. But we will get these houses finished and a million more. But you can see it's pretty simple the way I broke it down. It's not going to be that difficult of a sew, other than the pieces are really tiny. It's just a very simple sew on a diagonal or sew the straight pieces together. It doesn't get much easier than that. And then the whole assembly. It's more the designing that's going to be the more complicated part, and then actually the most complicated is going to be putting the houses on the curved road, means putting the wedges and shapes in between the houses so that they curve along with the road as well. That's going to be the most difficult part. This part, easy peasy. Hope you enjoy it, and I will see you in a couple of weeks. All right? Take care. Bye-bye.